What if Count Dooku survived? Anakin stands over Dooku's body, lightsabers either side of his neck, as Chancellor Palpatine commands him to do it, but Anakin's mind wavers. He shouldn't kill an unarmed man, it's not the Jedi way. He puts away his lightsabers and hits the Count across the head, rendering him unconscious. Anakin didn't want to end his life. He'd be of more use if they could question him and learn more about the Separatists and Sith. He turns to the Chancellor and tells him he's more useful alive than dead. This annoyed Palpatine. Taking out Dooku in cold blood was meant to be Anakin's first step down the dark path, but now he'd have to change his plans. Now Anakin has to carry both Dooku and Obi-Wan's unconscious body until Kenobi wakes up and can assist Anakin. The next couple of events are carried out as usual. They fight Grievous, but he escapes, and they crash land his ship on Coruscant. They take Dooku into prison, where he is questioned and interrogated over and over again by Republic military leaders and members of the Jedi Council. But the Count doesn't crack, and he doesn't plan on talking. Palpatine was annoyed with Dooku's survival. He wanted Anakin to kill him, to welcome the revenge he would feel and open himself up to the dark side. But he also exposed his true motivation to Dooku, who by now knows Palpatine planned to discard him all along and feels his apprentice might betray him now. Because of this, Palpatine arranges for Dooku to be assassinated. This is carried out later that night, as his assassins secretly enter the Republic prison undetected. They make their way to Dooku's cell and find him meditating in a seated position. They reach out their guns, ready to fire, but before they can do this, Dooku jumps and kicks one of their arms up, causing the bullet to miss, and he uses the Force to dodge the rest. But the blaster fire was loud and alerted the guards, who rushed over immediately to engage and stop the assassins. The prison was sent into lockdown, with the assassins apprehended, and ultimately Dooku survived. The next day, Yoda and Ki-Adi-Mundi arrive to question Dooku on the previous night. They try to reason with him that obviously his master, Darth Sidious, no longer has any use for him, since it's certain he tried to have him killed. They plead with him to see reason, but deep down, they know this is futile. He's too far gone. Dooku tells them his master is simply trying to tie loose ends and can't take the risk that he'll reveal anything. But his master has nothing to worry about. He would never reveal their master plan to transform the galaxy into their image. Although as Dooku is saying this to the Jedi, his mind does waver. He starts to question his role in everything and wonders whether he's been a pawn this entire time. The Jedi ask Dooku if he has any humanity left, who tells them he's doing it because he has humanity left and wants what's best for the galaxy, and they'll learn this soon. Yoda takes one last look at his fallen apprentice before he leaves, but believes that there might be hope for him yet. He feels something is slightly off and decides to explore this feeling. Later on in that day, Dooku gets replacement cybernetic hands put back on his wrist, similar to the ones Anakin has, but because of this, Dooku can no longer use telekinesis or Sith lightning. By this time, Anakin has been told about Padme being pregnant, and he's ecstatic and can't wait to build a family, but his mood switches that night as he has dreams of Padme dying in childbirth, similar to the dreams he had of his mother years ago. This completely turns Anakin's world upside down, and Palpatine begins the final steps of his seduction of the Chosen One. But that night, Dooku's world also changes. He thinks more deeply on the Clone War conflict and the role he has played. He's done everything Palpatine has always asked, as he believed the Republic had to be stripped down to its fundamentals and built back up if the galaxy ever wanted to see true peace and order again. But he's never thought about the role he would play once this came into fruition, and he wonders what role Palpatine would give him. But then he wonders whether he's actually going to have a role, and Palpatine ordering Anakin to kill him makes him wonder whether Palpatine sees him as part of the future, or whether he's been strung along just to be an obstacle in his manipulation of Anakin Skywalker, a lamb bred for slaughter. Meanwhile, the next morning, Yoda visits Dooku again, but this time by himself. He asks Dooku whether his feelings have changed from the previous night. They have slightly, but Dooku doesn't show this, as the Master sits down in front of him. In the original timeline, Yoda was sent to Kashyyyk at this time. However, in this story, he decides it's more important for him to stay with Dooku an attempt to connect with the good still inside of him, and Master Depa Billaba was sent instead. Yoda begins telling Dooku a story about when he was training him. It was one of Dooku's first missions as his apprentice, and Yoda tells him he still has the same eagerness and determination as he did back then. Dooku tells his old master that he remembers. Although so long ago, he can remember the excitement about being chosen to be the apprentice of the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Yoda asks him if he remembers what happened on the mission, who tells his master he does. Dooku describes how they saved the village from the terror of a tyrannical government and brought peace back to their world. He smiles as he says this, the good old days, but asks his master why is he bringing this up. Yoda tells him that this is the true essence of the Jedi Order, to act to protect the people of the Republic. He knows Dooku believes the Jedi are failing at this. However, the intention is still the same. He admits mistakes have been made in the past, but that doesn't mean the Order can't change and do better. He looks Dooku in the eyes and asks him whether he believes the galaxy controlled by the Sith would be better or worse for the people of the Republic than it is now. Yoda stands and lets Dooku ponder on this question, and conflict takes over his soul. Back to Anakin. Palpatine sits with him, watching the opera, as he senses Anakin's fear has heightened. He's searching for the power and knowledge to save his wife, and he decides to give him this. He tells him the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, which intrigues Anakin, but tells him this is only a power that can be learned by a Sith. This gets Anakin considering the dark side, and Palpatine decides he will reveal himself to the boy tomorrow. That same night, Yoda meets with Dooku again, and they reminisce about the past when he was a Jedi and all the good that he did, further trying to convince Dooku that there is still hope for the Jedi Order, but also himself. But this time, Yoda purposefully listened to what Dooku said, his philosophy, and why he's doing what he's done. That Dooku believes the Jedi have become corrupt, that they blindly serve the Senate that fails to serve the Republic it represents. But Yoda tells Dooku he is right. In recent times, the Jedi have failed in this aspect, but asks him why. Why does the Senate fail to represent the people of the Republic? He reminds him about how he told Obi-Wan that the Sith was in control of the Republic Senate, and if this was true, the Sith would do whatever they could to make sure corruption flourishes in the Senate, so that they can obtain power for themselves. Dooku had never thought about this. The Sith had been spreading their influence in the shadows around the galaxy for 1,000 years, and no doubt during this time, infiltrated the Senate. Could the Sith be behind the corruption in the Senate that caused Dooku to leave the Jedi Order in the first place? Yoda tells him to think more on this, and picture how the Senate and galaxy would operate if the Sith weren't brewing chaos in the shadows all along. The next day, Palpatine reveals himself to Anakin, and similar events are carried out. Anakin is very tempted to join him, but admits he will turn him over to the Jedi Council. At this point, Yoda has gone back to visit Dooku, so Anakin goes to Mace, who gathers 3 other masters to face Palpatine. Yoda was with Dooku at the time, who couldn't sleep the night before, as he's come to the complete realization he's been made a fool of, perfectly manipulated by Palpatine, something that he thought due to his own arrogance he was immune to, but he was just as self-righteous and arrogant as the Jedi. He asks Yoda what he's hoping to accomplish here, who tells his apprentice he wants to pull him back from the path he's on, to show him that his intentions are good, but the way he's gone about it is wrong. Dooku tells his master it's too late for him, but Yoda says no one is ever truly gone, that he's been blinded by the dark side. However, Dooku tells his master that he now agrees and knows that's the case. Dooku asks Yoda what he should do, who tells him to help them defeat the Sith and work together to return prosperity to the galaxy. Dooku goes to tell him everything, but they both feel it at the same time. The dark side expand all over Coruscant, and the death of Masters Agen Kola, Saiti Tin, and Kit Fisto. Dooku tells Yoda it's happening, the culmination of the Sith plan. Yoda asks him where and who tells him Palpatine's office. Yoda's eyes go wide, who realizes it's all in this moment, and opens Dooku's cell to ask him if he will assist him, handing him a lightsaber. Dooku grabs this and they head off. Anakin has just arrived at Palpatine's office to see Windu holding his lightsaber under his chin. Palpatine calls to Anakin to help him, attempting to manipulate him, telling him the Jedi are attempting to take over, and that he alone has the power to save his wife from certain death. Windu tells him to not listen, that he's going to end the Sith once and for all. But Anakin tells Windu that he can't, that he needs Palpatine, and he must live. Anakin grabs his lightsaber, contemplating in his mind what to do. He'll do anything to save his wife, and Palpatine is the key to this. He stands there, shaking in fear, as Windu raises his lightsaber, ready to do what he has to stop him, as Yoda and Dooku barge into the room, calling for them all to stop. Anakin looks at the Grand Master, only a second away from igniting his own lightsaber. Palpatine's anger rises as he senses Anakin was about to fight for him against Windu, and once again asks him to help him. But Anakin hesitates and waits to hear what Yoda will say. Yoda approaches and tells Windu they won't kill him, that Anakin's right, it isn't the Jedi way to kill an unarmed prisoner. This is exactly what Anakin wanted to hear. If Palpatine was arrested, he could still use him to save Padme. But this is the opposite of what Palpatine wanted. He lets out another forced scream and sends lightning at Windu. This sends him flying back against the distant wall, and he struggles to get up. Yoda and Dooku ignite their blades, ready, and Palpatine calls for Anakin to help him, who stands in the middle, not knowing what to do. Anakin takes too long to decide, and Palpatine moves in a flash, using the Force to take Anakin's lightsaber and swings at him. If he won't join him, he must die here. Anakin manages to motion away, but Palpatine slashes his body and manages to cut his arm off. He winces in pain as Dooku and Yoda rush towards Palpatine, and the three engage in a duel. Palpatine calls Dooku a traitor, but he simply stares at his master, unshaken. Dooku was still getting used to his robotic hands. However, Yoda was at full force and wasn't holding back against the Sith Lord. Their lightsabers clashed and echoed around the room, three of the best duelists in the galaxy. Yoda manages to slash across Palpatine's thigh, and Dooku punches him across his face. The Sith stumble back for a moment, but secretly pulls a second lightsaber out from one of his statues and heads towards the Jedi. Dooku didn't sense the second blade, and Palpatine's about to ignite it right through his abdomen, but before he can, Palpatine stops in place and he can't move. Behind him, Windu has risen and uses the Force to hold Palpatine in place. Dooku makes the most of the situation and thrusts his blade through Palpatine's chest and defeats the Sith Lord. Windu and Anakin are taken to the hospital to treat their injuries, whilst Yoda and Dooku go to the Senate, where Dooku explains everything, how the Sith played both sides of the war since the very beginning, and how he and Palpatine were behind everything. This explanation was necessary, so the Jedi wouldn't get in trouble for murdering the Chancellor. But Dooku details to the Senate how the Separatists have wanted to end the war long ago, but he always ignored these requests and continued the war regardless. But now, a diplomatic solution to the war can happen, and limit further bloodshed that plagues the galaxy. Meanwhile, a Jedi Council meeting happens, where Anakin is placed on trial for many things. Firstly, his marriage was exposed during the confrontation with Palpatine, but also how he hesitated when Palpatine asked him to help, and that he even considered joining him. Anakin knew he was wrong in this sense, and the council came to the conclusion that Anakin be removed from the council and temporarily suspended from the Jedi Order until a permanent decision could be made. But this didn't bother Anakin, as a couple of days later, Padme successfully gave birth to Luke and Leia, and he finally has the family he's dreamed about. Meanwhile, Dooku has his own trial for the crimes he has committed against the galaxy. His role in defeating Sidious is taken into account. However, he's still sentenced to 50 years in prison, and will most likely spend the last of his days in jail. But he's at peace with this, as he was able to right his wrongs and defeat the Sith and the toxic influence they have over the galaxy. And after the war ended, the galaxy began to see peace and prosperity that they haven't seen in hundreds of years. Yoda visits Dooku often to discuss how the Jedi Order is changing their ways due to the influence he had, and they've stopped blindly serving the Senate, but now the people of the Republic are their #1 priority. Yoda will die 20 years later, and Dooku is allowed out of prison to attend his funeral, where he sheds many tears for his master, his friend, the one who pulled him back from the dark path and saved the galaxy. If you enjoyed this video, you have to watch What If Dooku Never Left the Jedi Order, or What If Anakin Skywalker Never Killed Count Dooku. That second video has the same initial scenario as this, but a completely different story. A few of you complained that I didn't follow Dooku as much in that timeline, so thought I'd have him as the focus in this one. Let me know your thoughts, please like and subscribe, I really appreciate all your support, and I'll see you all next time.